Hello everyone! Dear students, today we will be reading a poem. The title of our poem is The Laburnum Top, written by Ted Hughes. So I hope you are ready for some poetry. The poem, The Laburnum Top, is a beautiful poem in which the poet has used the laburnum tree and goldfinches as a symbol of life and its fluctuations. In this poem, the poet describes how the visit of a goldfinch changes the laburnum tree. The goldfinch transforms the tree and makes it come alive as the chicks of the goldfinch start to rustle and chirp on seeing her. Once the goldfinch leaves the tree becomes quiet and still again. The laburnum tree symbolizes the pattern of our life in general, which is perhaps inanimate or dull. The goldfinch breaks the usual pattern and makes it lively. Without the goldfinch, the laburnum tree is just like any other tree. In other words, it is the attitude of a person towards life that makes life meaningful and worth living. The laburnum top. The laburnum top is silent, quite still, in the afternoon yellow September sunlight. A few leaves yellowing, all its seeds fallen. Till the goldfinch comes, with a twitching chirrup, a suddenness, a startlement at the branch end. Then, sleek as a lizard, and alert and abrupt, she enters the thickness, and the machine starts up, of chitterings, and the tremor of wings and trillings. The whole tree trembles and thrills. It is the engine of her family. She stokes it full, then flirts out to a branch end, showing her barred face identity mask. Then, with eerie, delicate whistle chirrup whisperings, she launches away towards the infinite, and the laburnum subsides to empty. This was our poem, The Laburnum Top, written by Ted Hughes. The laburnum is a tree, a short tree with hanging branches, yellow flowers, and poisonous seeds. So the laburnum top is silent, quite still. In the afternoon yellow September sunlight, a few leaves yellowing, all its seeds fallen. From first lines of the poem, we can see that it was a daytime in the month of September when the tree was standing still and lifeless. The poem starts with a description of a laburnum tree whose top is still and silent. It is autumn season and leaves had turned yellow. Its seeds had fallen down. So the top of the tree is silent due to lack of movement. There is no breeze, no rustling of leaves, no wind. The poet describes the whole scene of the tree with yellow color. Yellow symbolizes beauty, stillness, silence, or death. Till the goldfinch comes. The goldfinch is a small yellow bird. Until the goldfinch comes. Here, there is a change happening. The goldfinch comes with a twitching chirrup. Twitching means a small, often involuntary movement of the body or a muscle, a sudden muscle spasm. Chirrup is a short, high-pitched sound made by a bird. A suddenness, a startlement at a branch end. Something is happening at the branch end. A suddenness. Suddenness means abruptness, the quality of being sudden, something that is unexpected. Startlement means amazement or surprise. A suddenness, a startlement at the branch end. Something is happening at the branch end. We can see that just when the goldfinch comes on the tree, a change happens. A change due to arrival of the goldfinch. The goldfinch arrives to the lifeless scene of the tree with a chirping sound, with a twitching chirrup. The goldfinch is going to her nest in order to feed the chicks. Her chicks are resting in the nest. Then, sleek as a lizard and alert and abrupt, she enters the thickness and the machine starts up. Sleek means smooth or shiny. Sleek as a lizard. The goldfinch is compared to a lizard, sleek as lizard and alert and abrupt. Alert means vigilant, aware or wide awake. Abrupt means sudden or unexpected. She enters the thickness and the machine starts up. Thickness refers to the state or quality of being thick. It refers to density. She enters the thickness where the nest was. And a machine starts up. A machine starts up of chitterings and a tremor of wings and thrillings. The whole tree trembles and thrills. Chittering means twittering sound made by birds. Tremor of wings. Tremor means trembling or shaking. Shaking of wings. Trilling means a fluttering sound of high notes. So these little chicks are very excited on seeing their mother. And the whole tree trembles and thrills. To tremble and thrill means to shiver or shake. The whole tree is now shaking. So on the mother's return, there is a sudden movement which stirs the tree. The little chicks are excited on her arrival and they start chirruping. The cautious mother enters the tree with great care so that no predator can come to know that her babies are housed in the nest. The poet has compared the alert, abrupt and sleek movement of a goldfinch with that of a lizard. So as soon as she arrives, her chicks start chirping like a machine. They start vibrating and flapping their wings. As soon as she arrives, the lifeless tree becomes alive and it trembles and shakes. Because of the movement of the bird and her chicks, the tree starts to shake and thrill. It is the engine of her family. The goldfinch has been called the engine of the family, just as the engine starts up the machine. Her arrival in the nest had suddenly started up the silent machine. The nest, which means the young ones who have started chittering and making noise. In other words, the laburnum tree and the goldfinch bird, as the engine of the family, who provides food to her young ones and moves to the other branch end. She stokes it full. She stokes it full. To stoke means to add fuel. It refers to the goldfinch feeding the chicks. She stokes it full. Then flirts out to a branch end. To flirt means to move abruptly, with light steps. After she feeds the chicks, she moves away to a branch end, showing her barred face identity mask. So by feeding her young ones, she has added fuel to the machine, and as a result, the chicks now have the energy to be active and make noise. After feeding her chicks, the goldfinch flies up and rests on the end of a branch of the tree, and her identity is concealed behind the yellow flowers and yellowing leaves. In other words, after feeding them, she flies to the other side of the branch. Her dark-colored face with a yellow body was barely visible as she vanished behind the yellow leaves. Then, with eerie, delicate whistle-chirrup whisperings, she launches away towards the infinite. Eerie means strange or weird, unusual. Delicate means fine, intricate or fragile. Whistle, chirrup, whispering. Whisperings refers to speaking very softly. To whisper means to murmur, to rustle, or to mutter. She launches away towards the infinite. To launch means to start or set in motion. Towards the infinite, infinite is something which is not finite. So in this case it refers to the sky. With eerie, delicate, whistle-chirrup whisperings, she launches away towards the infinite. Making these unusual, delicate, fine whisperings, the goldfinch takes off. She flies away towards the infinite, towards the sky. And the laburnum subsides to empty. To subside means to recede or to become less intense. To subside to empty means to fall silent, to fall calm. It means to diminish or to become empty again, to become empty and silent again. So after some time, when the goldfinch leaves, she flies away towards the sky. The laburnum tree becomes silent again, and everything seems to be the same as it was before the arrival of a goldfinch. So in the last line of the poem, the poet is portraying the unexpected silence which comes on the laburnum tree when this small bird leaves the tree. So when the bird leaves the tree, there is silence. The bird was on the tree for some time, and during this time the tree was noisy and lively due to the presence of goldfinch. But after its departure, the tree again becomes calm and quiet. It falls silent. We can see that poet has given two opposite scenarios of a tree. The tree first being lifeless and still, and then giving life and shelter to birds, to goldfinch and her young ones. When analyzing literature, it is important to consider the imagery used so as to understand both the mood and the symbolism. Imagery examples are prevalent in all types of literature. Poets, novelists, and playwrights use it to create some kind of mood. For example, there is an opening. It was a dark and stormy night. This is one example of imagery. Details of imagery can also be read symbolically. Imagery refers to the name given to the elements in the poem that spark off the senses. And despite image being a synonym for picture, images are not only visual. Any of the five senses can respond to what a poet writes, and the imagery world that the author has created. Five senses such as sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. So, as a literary device, imagery consists of descriptive language that can function as a way for the reader to better imagine the world of the piece of literature and also add symbolism to the work. As we said, imagery draws on the five senses. It can also pertain to details about movement or a sense of a body in motion, or emotions or sensations of a person, such as fear or hunger. In our poem, there are certain poetic devices being used. First of all, alliteration. Alliteration is figure of speech. These are figures of speech. Alliteration means number of words having the same first consonant sound that occurs close together in series. In other words, alliteration is the repetition of these beginning sounds in two or more nearby words. Authors add alliteration to entertain their readers and to draw attention to a phrase or a sentence. Example of alliteration in our poem is, for example, September sunlight. Or tree trembles. Trembles thrills. A suddenness, a startlement. You can see these words start with the same consonant sound. September, sunlight starts with consonant S. Same as suddenness and startlement. Or, in these words, tree trembles and thrills. There is consonant T which is being repeated. These are some examples of alliterations. September sunlight, a suddenness, a startlement, and tree trembles and thrills. We said alliteration is a figure of speech. It refers to repetition of a consonant sound at the beginning of two or more words. Alliteration. A figure of speech. Next figure of speech in our poem is simile. Simile refers to comparison between two things using like or as. The poem of simile in our poem is, the example of simile in our poem is sleek as a lizard. We said simile means comparison between two things using as or like, as it is used here. Sleek as a lizard. This is the example of simile, where one thing is compared to another. Next figure of speech is metaphor. Metaphor. Metaphor refers to an indirect comparison between two things. Generally, a quality is compared. In this figure of speech, a word or a phrase is used to represent something else. Examples of metaphor in this poem are engine of her family, where engine represents the mother goldfinch and machine which represents the nest. Machine represents a nest, where these bird chicks are waiting for their mother. We said metaphor is indirect comparison between two things. One more example is showing her barred face identity mask. These are three examples of metaphor, where a word or phrase is used to represent something else. Barred face identity mask. These are three examples of metaphor. Next poetic device used in the poem is personification. It refers to attribution of personal nature characteristics to something non-human. Example of personification is, in our poem, is the whole tree trembles and thrills. This is the example of personification. Another example of personification is whistle, chirrup, whistlings. Whistle, chirrup, whisperings. These are examples of personification. Personification means giving human characteristics to non-human things. It can refer to thoughts, emotions, actions, and so on. Personification can be a good way to evoke strong imaginative imagery. Another poetic device used in our poem is onomatopoeia. It is a figure of speech where a word is formed from a sound similar to it. Onomatopoeia. Examples of this poetic device in our poem are twitching, chirrup, or we said twitching, chirrup, or chitterings, as well as trillings, or whistle, chirrup. This poetic device is called onomatopoeia. It is a figure of speech where a word is formed from a sound similar to it. Another poetic device used in the poem is transferred epithet. Transferred epithet is a transferred description, a certain description which refers to a character or event, but it's used to describe a different situation or character. For example, her barred face identity mask. This is one example of transferred epithet. We said a transferred epithet is a description that refers to a character or event, but it is used to describe a different situation or character. In other words, the figure of speech where the adverb is transferred to another noun. Her barred face identity mask. The flowers of the laburnum plant, the flowers of the laburnum tree are barred. But here it is placed before bird's face. That is why barred face. Barred face identity mask. This is an example of transferred epithet in this poem. The flowers of the laburnum tree fall like bards, and when the bird sits behind the flowers, the shadow of the flowers on her face looks like she is wearing a mask that has bars on it. This is the example of transferred epithet. There is also some repetition in our poem. It means same words or phrases used over and over again. Repetition, for example, and alert, and abrupt. This is a repetition. Dear students, these were poetic devices used in a poem. We will talk more about poetic devices next time. This will be all for today. Have a nice day and see you soon.